Jake Morrison and his associates were utterly repulsed upon witnessing Zara Washington secure a position on the Westfield High Cheer Squad. In their estimation, she was a young woman of color who did not fit the mold of their predominantly Caucasian cheerleaders. Consequently, they attempted to ostracize her through the only means they understood: aggression. However, what Jake failed to perceive beneath Zara's placid demeanor was the rigorous, disciplined training instilled by her father, a former Navy SEAL. They presumed her to be defenseless, expecting her to falter like all those who had previously incurred his displeasure. They were catastrophically mistaken. Zara Washington was poised to impart a stark lesson on the consequences of arrogant bullies underestimating the daughter of a soldier. Before proceeding, please indicate your location in the comments section and ensure you subscribe, as tomorrow's narrative is one you absolutely won't want to miss. The gymnasium thrummed with palpable anticipation as 23 young women awaited the final cheer team selections. Zara Washington stood third from the left, her hands resting calmly at her sides, despite the frantic pounding within her chest. She had executed every routine flawlessly, hit every mark precisely, and maintained a persistent smile that left her cheeks aching after 3 arduous days of tryouts. Ladies, each of you has demonstrated exceptional spirit and unwavering dedication, Coach Peterson announced, her clipboard held defensively before her. This year's Westfield High Varsity Cheer Team will proudly and excellently represent our institution. Zara's gaze swept across the gymnasium, encompassing the multitude of blonde ponytails and sun-kissed complexions surrounding her. She observed the football team entering through the side doors, their practice having just concluded. Jake Morrison led the group, his quarterback's confident swagger evident even in his sweat-drenched practice attire. Tyler Knox, his thick arms crossed over his chest, flanked him, while Brandon Mills trailed behind, seemingly eager to align himself with them. The following individuals have rightfully earned their place on this year's squad, Coach Peterson continued, her voice resonating clearly. She proceeded to read the names in alphabetical order, each announcement met with excited squeals and affectionate embraces. Zara Washington! The pronouncement struck her with the force of a lightning bolt. She had made it. She had genuinely made it. Congratulations erupted around her, mingled with barely concealed astonishment from some of the other girls. Zara maintained a composed, professional expression, a testament to her father's teachings. From across the gym, she felt a direct gaze upon her. Jake Morrison was staring intently, his jaw set. He leaned in to whisper something to Tyler, who responded with a dismissive shake of his head. Brandon, looking bewildered, simply followed his friend's lead. "Congratulations to our new Eagles," Coach Peterson exclaimed, clapping her hands. "Team meeting tomorrow after school. We have a considerable amount of work ahead of us before homecoming." As the jubilant atmosphere swirled around her, Zara gathered her gym bag and made her way toward the exit. The football players had strategically positioned themselves near the doors, a convenient coincidence that sent a tremor of apprehension through her. "Excuse me," she said politely, attempting to pass. Jake shifted slightly to his right, not entirely obstructing her path, but making it clear she would have to maneuver around him. "So, you're the new addition to our cheer squad?" "That's correct," Zara replied, meeting his gaze directly. "An interesting selection by Coach Peterson." Tyler's voice carried just enough to be overheard by nearby students. "Quite progressive." "I earned my position just like everyone else," Zara stated calmly. Brandon shifted uncomfortably, but remained silent as Jake offered a smile that never quite reached his eyes. "Oh, I'm sure you did. It's just that our fans have certain expectations regarding the appearance of their cheerleaders." The words lingered in the air like a noxious cloud. Other students slowed their conversations, sensing an emerging conflict. "And what exactly should they look like?" Zara inquired, her voice steady despite the rising heat in her chest. "You know," Jake shrugged. "Traditional. The kind of girls who embody eagle pride, with blonde hair, school spirit, the whole package, like Barbie dolls." Zara tilted her head slightly. Tyler stepped forward. "Like girls who belong here. Girls who understand the essence of this school." "I understand perfectly," Zara adjusted her bag strap. This school is about excellence, academics, and representing our community with pride. That is precisely what I intend to do. Jake's smile faltered for a fleeting moment before returning. We shall see about that. Football season is a long journey, with many games and considerable pressure. Not everyone is cut out for it. Good thing I am. She moved past them without another word, feeling their stares burning into her back. Meanwhile, the three young men watched her depart, their expressions darkening as other students dispersed toward the parking lot. Are you serious right now? Jake's voice dropped to a low murmur, intended only for his companions. They actually put her on the squad. Tyler spat toward a nearby trash can. This is precisely the kind of detritus that is degrading our school. What's next? Are they going to make us kneel for the anthem too, man? What if she's one of those girls who believes she's superior to everyone? Brandon finally interjected, his voice uncertain but attempting to echo their sentiments. Like she acts all intelligent and whatnot. Oh, she most certainly believes she's something special, Jake retorted, his jaw clenched. Did you observe her demeanor? As if we were the issue. Tyler's face contorted with distaste. I'm not cheering next to that. My father's going to be furious when he discovers they've placed some token diversity hire on the squad instead of Ashley Martinez. Ashley has been anticipating this for 2 years. It's simply not right, man. Jake shook his head. Our fans do not wish to see that representing our school. They desire genuine Eagle girls, not some... He left the sentence unfinished, but his implication was clear to his friends. Brandon nodded eagerly, desperate to fit in. Yeah, precisely. Like, what will people think when they see our cheerleaders? This isn't that kind of school. Well, she's about to discover what kind of school this truly is, Tyler declared, cracking his knuckles. Football season will be quite educational for her. Jake's smile returned, cold and calculating. Oh yes, exceptionally educational. The harassment commenced subtly, almost innocently, easily dismissed as mere coincidence. On Monday morning, Zara arrived at her locker to find it slightly ajar. Her combination lock hung open, and her books had been rearranged. Nothing was missing, merely disturbed. She glanced around the hallway, catching Jake Morrison's eye 3 lockers down. He was engaged in conversation with a sophomore girl, but his attention repeatedly drifted toward Zara. Strange, she murmured, reorganizing her textbooks. By third period, news of the new cheer roster had circulated. Zara felt the stares in every hallway, heard the whispered conversations that abruptly ceased as she passed. Some students offered encouraging smiles, but others appeared perplexed, as if she were an unsolvable enigma. Hey, Zara. Madison Clark, one of the senior cheerleaders, approached her after English class. I'm so thrilled you made the team. We are going to have an incredible season. Thanks, Madison. I can't wait to get started. Don't let anyone make you feel like you don't belong, okay? You earned this just like the rest of us. The very fact that Madison felt compelled to utter those words confirmed Zara's burgeoning suspicion. People were indeed talking. During lunch, she sat with her usual group of friends from the Honor Society when Tyler Knox ambled past their table. His shoulder brushed her chair with enough force to jolt her backward. Oops, he said, continuing without pausing or looking back. Sorry about that. Her friend Jessica frowned. That was odd. Tyler's never that clumsy. Maybe he's having an off day, Zara replied, though she was already meticulously cataloging the incident in her mind. The true message arrived during 7th period study hall. Zara pulled out her phone to check the time and discovered a notification from Instagram. Someone had tagged her in a post. The image was a screenshot of the school's announcement regarding the new cheer team, with Zara's name circled in red. The caption read, Guess Westfield's going woke now. R.I.P. Real Eagle Pride. Fran, not my cheerleader. The post had already garnered 37 likes and a handful of comments that churned her stomach. Most were carefully phrased to avoid outright slurs, but the underlying message was undeniably clear. Diversity hire much. She doesn't even look like she belongs here. There goes the neighborhood. Zara meticulously screenshotted everything before blocking the account, which belonged to an individual named Eagle Pride 2024, a patently fictitious identity. Her hands trembled slightly as she put her phone away. That afternoon at cheer practice, the tension was palpable. Coach Peterson led them through basic routines, but Zara could sense the furtive glances from some of her teammates. Madison and a few others were genuinely welcoming, but others seemed to be observing, anticipating what might unfold. "All right, ladies, let's run through the homecoming routine one more time," Coach Peterson called out. "Zara, you'll be in the back row for now until you've familiarized yourself with all the formations." As they lined up, Brittany Stevens, a junior with impeccably curled blonde hair, positioned herself directly in front of Zara. During the routine, she repeatedly took a slight step backward, forcing Zara to adjust her spacing. "Sorry," Brittany would whisper each time, still getting accustomed to the new formation. By the end of practice, Zara had been stepped on twice and elbowed once during a turn sequence, all presented as unintentional, according to Brittany's apologetic smile. Walking to her car afterward, Zara noticed the football team concluding their practice on the adjacent field. Jake Morrison was engrossed in conversation with Coach Reynolds. Both men were glancing toward the parking lot where the cheerleaders were loading their gear. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father. "How was the first practice, Warrior?" "Fine," she typed back, then deleted it. "Good. Learning the routines. Pick you up for dinner? Want to hear all about it? I'll drive myself home. See you there." That evening, seated across from her father at their kitchen table, Zara picked at her grilled chicken while Commander Washington observed her with the intense focus that had defined his career as an effective military leader. "You're rather quiet tonight," he commented. "Just tired. New team. A lot to absorb." "Uh-huh." He set down his fork. "And how are your new teammates treating you?" Zara hesitated. Her father had instilled in her the importance of reporting threats honestly, yet she was acutely aware of his protective instincts. "Most of them are fine. There's always an adjustment period." "And the ones who aren't fine?" She looked up sharply. "What makes you suspect that, Zara?" His voice held the patient tone of someone accustomed to interrogating adversary combatants. "I did not raise you to deceive me, particularly concerning your safety. What is transpiring?" She sighed, retrieving her phone to show him the Instagram post. His expression darkened as he read through the comments. "This is merely the beginning," he stated quietly. "Anonymous posts, practice accidents, petty territorial games. They are testing you, observing your reaction. So, what should I do? Document everything. Screenshots, witnesses, times, and dates. But refrain from reacting prematurely. Allow them to reveal their full intentions. And if the situation escalates," Commander Washington's smile was razor sharp, "then we will explore your options. But for the present, remain vigilant and astute. They have selected the wrong individual to intimidate." As Zara ascended the stairs to begin her homework, she remained unaware of the black pickup truck that had been parked across the street for the past hour, nor of the three figures inside watching her house with mounting animosity. Tomorrow would bring fresh challenges, and Jake Morrison was already formulating his next strategy. The harassment intensified over the subsequent 2 weeks, akin to water accumulating behind a dam. On Tuesday morning, Zara discovered her cheer shoes were missing from her gym locker. She had left them there after practice the previous evening, and now they were gone. Coach Peterson had to lend her an older pair that were 2 sizes too large. "That's peculiar," Madison remarked, frowning. "Who would take someone's shoes?" "Perhaps they fell out," Brittany suggested, with feigned concern. "These old lockers are so unreliable." Zara remained silent, but she noticed Jake Morrison smirking at her oversized shoes during their shared chemistry class. Wednesday marked a new low. Someone had placed a banana on her car windshield with a note attached. "Monkey see, monkey do." Zara crumpled the paper and discarded both items in the trash, but her hands trembled with suppressed rage as she drove home. Thursday brought vandalism. Someone had scratched "Go home" into the metal door of her car. When she reported it to Principal Martinez, he sighed heavily. "I will have maintenance inspect it, but vandalism is difficult to prove without witnesses," he stated. Are you certain you wish to make a significant issue of this? Sometimes it is preferable to let these matters subside. So I should simply tolerate someone defacing school property because of my ethnicity. Now, Zara, let us refrain from jumping to conclusions about the motivation. What other motivation could there possibly be? Principal Martinez shifted uncomfortably. I will speak with some students. I'll see what information I can gather. In the interim, perhaps maintain a low profile. That afternoon, the true message arrived during lunch. Zara was walking past the football team's table when Tyler Knox extended his foot. She stumbled, but managed to regain her balance. "Watch where you're going," he said, loud enough for half the cafeteria to hear. "You tripped me." Tyler stood up, all 6 feet 3 inches of him, towering over her. "Are you calling me a liar?" The cafeteria fell silent. Jake Morrison and Brandon Mills flanked Tyler, forming a formidable wall of Letterman jackets. "I'm stating that you need to move your foot," Zara replied calmly. "Or what?" Jake stepped forward. "Are you going to run crying to Daddy? Oh, wait, I heard he's some kind of military guy. Must be embarrassing having a daughter who can't handle high school." The words struck like a physical blow. Zara felt a flush rise to her cheeks, but she maintained a steady voice. "At least my father taught me how to be a decent human being." Tyler's face turned crimson. "You think you're superior to us? Walking around here as if you own the place?" "I believe I belong here as much as anyone else." "No." Brandon finally spoke, his voice wavering, but determined to impress his friends. "You truly do not." Several students had produced their phones, sensing an unfolding drama. Zara realized she was outnumbered and surrounded, with potentially dozens of cameras recording her humiliation. "We shall see about that," she said quietly, then walked away. Behind her, she heard Jake's voice carry across the silent cafeteria. "Yeah, walk away. That's what you people do best." The phrase, "you people," echoed in her mind for the remainder of the day. Friday brought the incident that irrevocably altered everything. It was game day, and the entire school buzzed with anticipation for the homecoming matchup against their arch-rivals. Zara had finally mastered the routines well enough to advance to the second row. And despite the preceding events, she felt a genuine thrill at the prospect of performing before the enthusiastic crowd. She was walking toward the gymnasium for final preparations when she noticed the puddle. Recent rain had created a muddy depression directly outside the entrance, approximately 3 feet wide and 6 inches deep. Most students navigated around it without a second thought. Zara was texting her father about pickup arrangements when she heard footsteps approaching from behind. She looked up just as Jake Morrison grabbed her left arm. "Hey, new girl. Got a message for you." Before she could react, Tyler Knox seized her right arm while Brandon Mills positioned himself to obscure the view from the parking lot. "What are you doing?" Zara demanded, attempting to break free. "Teaching you a lesson about knowing your place?" Jake snarled. They shoved her backward toward the puddle. Zara tried to dig her heels in, but her sneakers found no purchase on the wet concrete. "Stop it!" she yelled, loud enough to draw the attention of several students. "Oops!" Tyler exclaimed as they delivered a final push. Zara landed heavily in the muddy water, her uniform skirt tearing on a shard of broken concrete hidden beneath the surface. Cold, dirty water soaked through her clothes as she scrambled to rise. The 3 boys stood over her, no longer making any pretense of hiding their satisfaction. "Looks like you slipped," Jake said loudly. "How clumsy." Several cheerleaders had emerged from the building, drawn by the commotion. Madison gasped and rushed forward. "Oh my goodness, Zara, are you all right?" "I'm fine," Zara managed, but her voice cracked. Mud streaked her face and arms, and her torn uniform exposed her dignity as well as her skin. Brittany Stevens pulled out her phone. "This is definitely going on Instagram. #EpicFail. "Don't you dare," Madison snapped, but Zara knew it was too late. By nightfall, half the school would witness her humiliation. The football players were already departing, high-fiving each other as if they had just scored a touchdown. "Nice uniform," Tyler called over his shoulder. "Really brings out your eyes," Jake laughed. Maybe now you'll think twice about where you belong." Zara remained seated in the muddy water for another few seconds, not because she was incapable of standing, but because she needed to etch that moment into her memory. The sensation of cold mud seeping through her clothes, the sound of their laughter, the taste of humiliation in her mouth, and most crucially, the absolute certainty that this could never happen again. Madison helped her to her feet, offering tissues and apologies, but Zara barely registered them. Her thoughts were occupied by her father's words. "Sometimes you must forge your own justice when the system fails you." Tonight, she would tell him everything, and tomorrow, the true battle would commence. Zara remained in her car in the school parking lot for 20 minutes after the game, still clad in her muddy, torn uniform. The Eagles had secured a victory with a score of 28-14, and she could hear echoes of celebration from the fieldhouse, but the triumph felt hollow. She had observed the entire game from the sidelines in a borrowed uniform that hung loosely on her frame, a constant reminder of her degradation. Her phone buzzed with text messages, some supportive from Madison and her Honor Society friends, others sharing links to social media posts that made her stomach churn. The video of her being shoved into the mud puddle had already been shared 43 times, accompanied by captions such as "Diversity hire gets reality check" and "When keeping it real goes wrong." Finally, she drove home. Commander Washington was waiting in the kitchen when she entered, still wearing her stained uniform. He took one look at her and placed his coffee mug down with deliberate precision. What transpired? Zara had intended to ease into the conversation, perhaps commencing with the minor incidents and gradually progressing to today's events. However, upon observing her father's controlled expression, the very same look he wore when briefing his SEAL team before perilous missions, she found herself recounting everything at once. 3 football players have been tormenting me since I joined the team: Jake Morrison, Tyler Knox, and Brandon Mills. It began with comments about how I don't belong. Then, missing shoes, a vandalized locker, social media posts. Today, they shoved me into a mud puddle in front of half the cheer squad and tore my uniform. Her father listened without interruption, his countenance growing progressively darker. When she concluded, silence stretched between them for several heartbeats. "Show me the social media posts," he requested quietly. Zara handed him her phone. Commander Washington scrolled through the comments, his jaw tightening with each swipe. "And the school's response?" "Principal Martinez advised me to maintain a low profile and let it blow over." A dangerous glint flickered in her father's eyes. "Did he now?" "Dad, I understand what you're contemplating, but what I mean is, you want to go to the school and handle this yourself, but that will only exacerbate things for me. They will say, I cannot fight my own battles." Commander Washington studied his daughter with newfound respect. "You are correct, but this cannot continue." "I know. That's why I need you to teach me." "Teach you what?" Zara met his gaze directly. "Everything. How to defend myself, how to retaliate, how to ensure this never happens again." Her father remained silent for a long moment, weighing her words. Physical confrontation should always be the final option. "Zara, once you breach that boundary, they've already transgressed theirs. They laid hands on me today." A valid point. He reclined in his seat. However, there are alternative methods for dealing with tormentors. Strategic approaches, ones that leave them with no grounds to claim victimhood. What exactly do you mean? I mean, you are the progeny of David Washington. You possess greater intellect than those lads. You exhibit superior self-control, and you have an attribute they lack, which is what? Fortitude. And a father who dedicated 20 years to mastering the art of neutralizing threats. His smile was as frigid as tempered steel. "Impart to me every detail you have concerning them. Their daily routines, their customary behaviors, their vulnerabilities. We shall orchestrate this as a military endeavor." Concurrently, across town at the residence of Jake Morrison, the trio of gridiron athletes were celebrating their triumph in multiple respects. "Did you witness the expression on her visage when she plunged into the water?" Brandon guffawed, taking another draft from his purloined lager. "Invaluable. The most gratifying aspect was observing her attempt to maintain an air of defiance thereafter, Tyler interjected, as though she had not been utterly mortified. Jake settled back into his gaming chair, a sense of contentment washing over him. That ought to convey the message. She does not belong in this environment, and we will not feign otherwise. Do you believe she will abandon the team? Brandon inquired with hope. Nay. Tyler shook his head. Individuals such as her are recalcitrant. She will likely double down, endeavoring to substantiate a point. Then we shall be compelled to exercise greater ingenuity, Jake declared. We cannot permit her to believe she can simply disregard us. What if she divulges this to someone, such as her parents or the like? Brandon's voice carried a tremor of apprehension. Tyler scoffed. Disclose what? That she is ungainly and stumbled into a puddle. We committed no transgression, merely 3 gentlemen proceeding to practice who happened to be in proximity when she tripped. Precisely, Jake concurred. And even if she attempts to imbue this with significance, who will lend credence to her assertions over ours? My paternal figure virtually erected the new athletic facility. Tyler's father holds a position on the scholastic governing body. We are the scions of Eagle's Crest, and she is, he gestured dismissively. Not. Brandon assented enthusiastically. Furthermore, Coach Reynolds holds us in high regard. Principal Martinez will not jeopardize the football program on account of some diversity advocate exhibiting an attitude problem. Apropos of that, Tyler extracted his mobile device. Observe this. He exhibited to them a group correspondence thread populated by numerous other football players and their female companions. The visual recording of Zara's humiliation was circulating, accompanied by commentary that grew progressively coarser with each transmission. Tommy Williams indicated that his girlfriend might relinquish her position on the team if action is not taken to address the issue, Tyler reported. Evidently, a subset of the young women are becoming discomfited. Excellent, Jake remarked. Permit them to experience unease. Perhaps they will exert pressure upon Coach Peterson to implement alterations to the roster. What if that proves ineffective? Brandon inquired. Jake's countenance hardened. Then we shall escalate. We shall render her existence so unbearable that she is left with no alternative but to transfer educational institutions. To what extent are we contemplating? Tyler leaned forward, intrigued. To whatever extent is necessitated. This is our academy, our squad, our traditions. I shall not permit some interloper to desecrate that which we have constructed herein. Back at the Washington domicile, father and daughter were engrossed in strategic formulation. The crux of any successful undertaking is the acquisition of intelligence. Commander Washington elucidated, you must comprehend your adversaries more intimately than they comprehend themselves. What impels them? What instills fear in them? What would inflict the greatest harm upon them? Jake Morrison presides as the leader, Zara stated. Quintessential quarterback, affluent lineage. His paternal figure owns Morrison Construction. They erected half the edifices in this municipality. Vulnerabilities. He is under consideration by several collegiate institutions. Football constitutes his entire world. Advantageous. What of the others? Tyler Knox. His father sits on the school board. Tyler lacks Jake's intellectual acuity, but exhibits greater belligerence. A scholarship recipient, I surmise. Football represents his avenue of escape. And the third individual, Brandon Mills, a follower, not a commander. Desperate to assimilate with the other two. Parents are divorced. Resides with his maternal figure. Commander Washington nodded in affirmation. You have been attentive. Now, the initial precept. Never initiate hostilities when your adversary anticipates it. They are presently experiencing confidence. An aura of invincibility. That is when they commit errors. What category of errors? The sort that leave corroborating evidence, the sort that expose them for their true nature. He arose. However, prior to that, we must ensure your capacity for self-preservation should this devolve into a physical altercation once more. You imply combat training? I refer to survival training. There exists a distinction. His expression adopted a grave aspect. The events of today were merely the genesis, Zara. They shall escalate because you did not yield. Are you prepared for such an eventuality? Zara contemplated the mire, the derision, the photographic apparatus capturing her humiliation. I am prepared for whatever is required. Then we commence tomorrow. However, bear in mind, we are not merely imparting combat skills. We are instructing you on the path to victory. Saturday morning ushered in Zara's inaugural tutelage in what her father termed tactical perceptiveness. They initiated operations at precisely 6 o'clock in the morning in the basement, which Commander Washington had transformed into a training arena years prior. Punching implements were suspended from reinforced ceiling joists, and thick protective layers carpeted the concrete floor. Disregard all preconceived notions you harbor regarding combat, he commenced, circumambulating her slowly. Fictional narratives, cinematic productions, electronic games, all are specious. Authentic conflict is predicated upon efficacy, not spectacle. What is your meaning? I mean, you do not expend exertion on elaborate maneuvers or dramatic posturing. You identify the peril, neutralize it, and extricate yourself. 3 seconds or less. He positioned himself behind a punching sack, demonstrating a pharyngeal strike to constrict the trachea, a knee to the solar plexus to incapacitate them, a heel stomped to fracture the tarsus, thereby impeding their pursuit. Zara observed, imprinting the movements upon her memory. But preceding all of that, you observe. You ascertain their established patterns, their points of susceptibility, their areas of visual obscurity. Sun Tzu posited, the supreme excellence consists in subduing the enemy without engaging in combat. Thus, I study them initially. You scrutinize every facet, their destinations, their temporal proximity, their associates, their preoccupations. Information constitutes power, and power equates to leverage. They dedicated the subsequent hour to drilling fundamental defensive techniques, how to extricate oneself from a restraint, how to establish spatial separation, how to deliver an effective strike despite a diminutive stature. Zara's musculature ached, yet she persevered through the discomfort. Your advantage resides not in brute force, her father expounded. It lies in celerity, sagacity, and the element of unforeseen surprise. They anticipate your role as a victim, capitalize upon that presumption to your benefit. By precisely 8 o'clock, Zara was utterly spent yet invigorated. Her father proffered her a canteen of water and a notebook. Your assigned task commences presently. I require comprehensive intelligence pertaining to all 3 targets, their parking locations, their migratory routes between academic sessions, their social circles, every conceivable detail. How may I accomplish this without appearing conspicuous? Commander Washington offered a smile. You must learn to become imperceptible. Observe from a distance. Eavesdrop on conversations. Integrate yourself into the background akin to a covert operative, precisely analogous to espionage. Monday morning marked the commencement of Zara's surveillance endeavor. She arrived at the educational institution 30 minutes prior to the commencement of classes, positioning herself within the library, affording a clear vantage point of the student parking expanse. Jake Morrison arrived in his Obsidian Dodge Challenger at precisely 7:47 a.m., securing a parking space adjacent to the gymnasium entrance. Tyler Knox materialized 3 minutes thereafter in a dilapidated Ford pickup, parking 2 rows behind. Brandon Mills arrived last, conveyed by his maternal figure in a silver Honda Civic. During the midday repast, she occupied a seating arrangement with her dorsal aspect oriented toward the football contingent's table, yet she utilized her mobile device's camera to document their conversational patterns. Jake dominated the majority of the discourse. Tyler provided aggressive interjections, and Brandon predominantly vocalized amusement at inopportune junctures. Between academic periods, she charted their trajectories. Jake opted for an extended route to circumvent congregational throngs. Tyler traversed the artistic corridor, where instructors rarely patrolled, and Brandon followed whichever companion was geographically closest. Following 3 days of diligent observation, she had compiled 15 pages of notations. Exemplary work, her father remarked that evening, perusing her gathered intelligence. Now, what insights have you gleaned regarding their vulnerabilities? Jake's entire persona is constructed upon the foundation of football and his esteemed reputation. He is being courted by State University in Alabama. Tyler's family is experiencing fiscal difficulties. I overheard him engaged in a dispute with his girlfriend concerning their inability to afford the homecoming banquet. And Brandon, he is simply yearning for a sense of belonging. Proficient. Now, what would inflict the greatest distress upon each of them? Zara contemplated this query. Jake would be utterly devastated should his collegiate prospects evaporate. Tyler necessitates his athletic scholarship, otherwise he cannot afford higher education. Brandon would disintegrate should the other two ostracize him. And how might their collegiate prospects vanish should they become embroiled in serious difficulties, such as legal entanglements? Commander Washington bestowed his approval with a nod. Or if evidence emerged of conduct that collegiate recruiters deem unacceptable. What nature of evidence? That hinges upon their clandestine affairs. Every individual harbors secrets, Zara. The artifice lies in their discovery. Meanwhile, the trio of youths grew progressively bolder in their acts of harassment. Convinced that Zara's persistent presence signified her weakness, they embarked upon formulating a scheme more elaborate than mere muddy puddles and pilfered footwear. Back at their abode that evening, Zara was engaged in updating her intelligence dossiers when her father rapped upon her chamber portal. How progresses the reconnaissance? Adequately. I believe I comprehend their interpersonal dynamics. Jake is the strategic mind, Tyler is the enforcer, and Brandon represents the vulnerable element. Weak links can prove advantageous. They are frequently the first to falter under duress. Father. Zara raised her gaze from her notebook. What if they escalate prior to my readiness to retaliate? Commander Washington's demeanor grew somber. Then you shall recall what I instructed you regarding survival. You shall prioritize your own protection. Strategic considerations shall be secondary. However, based upon your observations, what do you surmise their subsequent stratagem will entail? Zara considered all that she had gleaned regarding their established patterns, their individual personalities, their motivations, something of greater magnitude than the puddle incident. They desire my departure. Therefore, they will endeavor to mortify me in a manner that cannot be ignored or dismissed. In that case, we must accelerate your tutelage. Tomorrow, we commence Phase 2. What constitutes Phase 2? Her father's smile was as keen as a blade, mastering the art of transforming their strengths into weaknesses. Phase 1 targets Jake Morrison, Commander Washington elaborated over their Thursday morning repast. He is the principal figure. Consequently, his downfall serves as a pronouncement to the others. By what means? Her father slid a manila folder across the table. Within were photocopies of prescription containers and a diminutive plastic receptacle containing pallid capsules. From whence did you procure these? Zara inquired, apprehension evident in her voice. The infirmary possesses inadequate security protocols. These are expired anxiolytic pharmaceuticals that were slated for proper disposal. His voice was matter-of-fact. The containers still bear patient identifiers, but the names have been rendered illegible. You wish for me to clandestinely place narcotics in his vehicle? I wish for you to engineer a scenario wherein Jake Morrison confronts genuine repercussions for the first instance in his privileged existence. Collegiate scouts do not recruit individuals implicated in drug possession citations. Zara gazed at the capsules, acutely aware of the gravity of the decision. This has the potential to irrevocably damage his entire future precisely as he seeks to dismantle yours. The distinction lies in the fact that you did not initiate this conflict. But what if, Zara? Her father's tone was gentle, yet resolute. These youths propelled you into a mire and subjected you to indignity before your peers. They have made it unequivocally clear that they will not cease their actions until you depart. At times, the sole recourse when confronting a bully is to strike them where it inflicts the most profound hurt. She nodded slowly, tucking the folder into her satchel. Friday afternoon, Zara maintained her vigil in the parking expanse following the conclusion of classes, positioned discreetly behind a van, affording a clear view of Jake's Challenger. The majority of students had departed, yet football practice was not scheduled to commence for an additional 30 minutes. An opportune moment. Jake's vehicle occupied a solitary position within the premium parking bays designated for senior athletes. Zara had observed him for a week and was cognizant of his established routine. He invariably repaired to the conditioning room prior to practice, leaving his vehicle unlocked under the presumption that no one would be audacious enough to tamper with it. She approached nonchalantly, as if proceeding towards her own vehicle parked 3 rows distant. When she ascertained that no observers were present, she swiftly actuated the passenger door of the Challenger. The vehicle's interior exuded the fragrance of expensive perfumery and presumptuousness. Zara deposited the prescription container beneath the passenger seat, orienting it such that it would be discernible to any observer, though not immediately apparent. The dislodged capsules were placed within the central console, interspersed among spare coinage and discarded receipts. Her hands trembled as she closed the door and withdrew. 2 hours hence, amidst the football practice, an anonymous denunciation was conveyed to the school's narcotics hotline. The informant reported suspicious activity in the vicinity of Jake Morrison's conveyance and suggested an immediate investigation prior to the student operating the vehicle under the influence. Principal Martinez and the school resource officer, Deputy Collins, approached Jake during practice. "Morrison, we are required to search your vehicle," Deputy Collins announced. "What basis?" Jake's composure wavered for the first time since Zara had become acquainted with him. An anonymous tip regarding illicit substance activity. Likely inconsequential, yet we are compelled to verify. Jake's teammates congregated, drawn by the commotion. Coach Reynolds hastened over from the opposite extremity of the field. "What is the nature of this disturbance?" "Merely a routine inspection, Coach." "It should necessitate mere moments, yet it protracted beyond that." Deputy Collins located the prescription container with considerable promptitude, and the dispersed capsules within the console sealed Jake's fate. "Whose prescription is this?" the deputy inquired, holding aloft the container with its obscured inscription. "I possess no knowledge of this. I have never encountered such in my entire existence." Jake's voice fractured with alarm. "You assert that someone clandestinely placed narcotics within your unsecured vehicle?" "Affirmative. Possibly. I am unaware of their ingress." Principal Martinez emitted a profound exhalation. "Jake, this situation is grave. These appear to be regulated substances. I am not under the influence of any prohibited agents. Inquire of anyone. Conduct a test upon me presently. That is not the pertinent issue. Possession is possession, irrespective of whether you ingested them." Coach Reynolds advanced. "Now, kindly pause, Principal Martinez. Jake is among our most skilled athletes. There must exist some form of misapprehension. Coach, I am bound by protocol. Jake, I am compelled to suspend you pending the conclusion of the investigation. Deputy Collins shall manage the legal ramifications." The color drained from Jake's countenance. "Suspended, yet the playoffs are imminent. Collegiate scouts are scheduled to observe." "You ought to have contemplated that circumstance prior to conveying these items to the academy," Deputy Collins remarked, carefully placing the evidence into a containment bag. "This is preposterous. Someone is orchestrating my downfall." "Who would perpetrate such an act?" Principal Martinez inquired. Jake's gaze flickered across the assembly of visages encircling him, his teammates, his mentors, scholastic officials. For the initial occasion, he appeared genuinely apprehensive. I possess no recollection, but this does not belong to me." From the elevated seating area, where she was engaged in calisthenics with the cheer squad, Zara observed the unfolding scene. Madison leaned over and whispered, "What do you surmise is transpiring?" "It appears Jake is in considerable difficulty," Zara responded, maintaining a neutral tone. "Incarceration related to substances, from what I can ascertain. That is utterly incongruous. Jake does not exhibit the characteristics of such an individual. One never truly ascertains the depths of another's character," Zara remarked softly. Across the athletic field, Jake was being escorted away from practice in restraints. Tyler Knox and Brandon Mills observed in a state of stunned disbelief as their leader was conveyed into the rear compartment of a law enforcement cruiser. "This is profoundly unsettling." Tyler muttered. Jake would not engage in such activities. Perhaps someone genuinely concealed them, Brandon vocalized with trepidation. Who would undertake such an action? Brandon's eyes located Zara on the periphery, observing. She was executing cheerleading movements with the remainder of the troop, seemingly oblivious to the unfolding drama on the football field. I possess no certainty, he stated with deliberation. However, Jake has cultivated a considerable number of adversaries of late. That evening, the local news broadcasted the apprehension of a prominent high school quarterback on charges of possession. Jake's father retained the services of an eminent legal representative within mere hours, yet the damage had already been inflicted. State University rescinded their recruitment proposal that very night, and Alabama followed suit the subsequent morn. At the Washington residence, Zara and her father viewed the news coverage during their evening repast. Phase 1 is concluded, Commander Washington articulated with quietude. I ought to derive satisfaction from this accomplishment, Zara remarked, rearranging sustenance on her plate. Yet, I feel only an internal void. That is a normal reaction. Justice is not invariably gratifying in the immediate aftermath. However, pose this question to yourself. How many other pupils will be spared harassment due to Jake Morrison learning that his actions carry consequences? Zara nodded, contemplating the multitude of individuals who might circumvent the mortification she herself had endured. What is Phase 2? Tyler Knox. And this occasion, we shall permit him to self-destruct. Jake's apprehension sent reverberations throughout Westfield High. By Monday morning, every individual was cognizant of the star quarterback facing grave accusations and having forfeited his collegiate scholarships. The football squad appeared shell-shocked, and Tyler Knox had assumed the leadership vacuum with barely contained ferocity. This entire situation is fundamentally erroneous, Tyler proclaimed loudly during the midday meal, his voice resonating across the refectory. Jake did not engage in such pursuits. Someone orchestrated his downfall. His girlfriend, Ashley, gently stroked his shoulder. Perhaps the accusations will not hold. Perhaps he will regain his scholarships. Absolutely not. Universities do not take gambles on athletes with records of substance abuse. Tyler's fist clenched around his sandwich. Someone annihilated his existence, and I shall ascertain the perpetrator. Zara occupied a seat 3 tables distant, consuming her meal quietly while attending to every utterance. She could sense Tyler's gaze scanning the refectory, searching for potential culprits, for someone upon whom to assign blame. That afternoon, Commander Washington reviewed the intelligence compilations concerning Tyler Knox. Families confronting financial hardship, he noted. The father is employed in construction. The mother is a part-time administrative assistant. Tyler necessitates that football scholarship. Otherwise, he faces the prospect of community college and student indebtedness. Therefore, we shall imperil his collegiate recruitment prospects as well. Her father nodded gravely. However, Tyler diverges from Jake. He's not entitled. He's desperate. And desperate individuals are considerably more perilous. What is your meaning? I mean, Tyler is the sort of individual who will resort to violence when cornered. We must exercise extreme caution in our handling of this matter. He extracted a diminutive vaporizing apparatus and several small pouches. Your intelligence-gathering efforts have yielded dividends. Tyler has been illicitly vending vaporizers to underclassmen behind the gymnasium. Zara gazed at the evidence. How did you... I followed him yesterday following the conclusion of classes. I observed him execute 3 transactions with freshman students, $50 each for devices that cost him $20 online. Thus, he is already contravening the law. Precisely. We are not required to fabricate evidence on this occasion. We merely need to ensure that the appropriate authorities become apprised of his existing activities. Zara experienced internal conflict. Father, what if this irrevocably damages his entire future? His family is in dire need of that scholarship funding. Commander. Zara, this constitutes the most arduous phase of any operation, questioning the justification of your actions. However, recall what Tyler inflicted upon you. Recall his derisive laughter when you were submerged in mud. I am aware, but... And recall that he has been disseminating nicotine products to 14-year-olds for personal gain. Tyler Knox made his choices long preceding our involvement. That evening, Zara grappled with her decision. She contemplated Tyler's desperation, his family's financial burdens, the expression on his face when Jake was apprehended. But then she recalled his hands gripping her arms, his voice uttering, "You people." The echo of his laughter as she sat in that muddy puddle. Tuesday afternoon, she rendered her determination. During Tyler's customary selling period behind the gymnasium, Zara positioned herself within the adjacent art building, her mobile camera poised for activation. She observed Tyler complete 2 exchanges with freshman males, demonstrably transferring currency for vaporizing devices. She meticulously documented all proceedings. Wednesday morning, she anonymously transmitted the visual recording to Principal Martinez's office, accompanied by photographic reproductions illustrating Tyler's Venmo transactions, complete with timestamps correlating precisely with the visual evidence. The confrontation transpired during the third period chemistry session. Principal Martinez and Deputy Collins escorted Tyler from his classroom. 20 minutes later, they were examining his school locker. Inside, they discovered 12 electronic smoking devices, small pouches of nicotine cartridges, and close to $300 in currency bound by a rubber band. Tyler's distressed objections echoed through the corridor. "This is a setup. Someone is targeting our team." "Mr. Knox," Principal Martinez stated firmly, "we possess video evidence of you supplying these devices to minors. This isn't a setup. It's you being held accountable." Tyler pleaded, "You don't understand. My family—" The principal interrupted. "Your family needed you to make better choices. You are suspended, pending expulsion proceedings. The police will address the criminal charges for distributing nicotine products to minors." By lunchtime, the news had circulated throughout the school. Tyler Knox, the star linebacker, being scouted by 3 state universities, was facing criminal prosecution and expulsion. After school, Ashley approached Zara at her locker. "Did you hear about Tyler?" "Hear?" Zara replied. "Yes, it's all over. Quite startling. He claims someone orchestrated this, targeting the football players." Ashley studied Zara's expression intently. "You wouldn't have any knowledge of that, would you?" Zara met her gaze directly. "Why would I be aware of Tyler's illicit dealings?" Ashley conceded. "I don't know. It's just a peculiar coincidence with Jake's arrest and now this. Perhaps they aren't as flawless as everyone believed." Ashley's features grew stern. "Tyler is going to lose everything because of this." Zara felt those words more acutely than she anticipated. She recalled Tyler's desperate countenance, his family's financial hardships, and the cascading effects of her actions. "That's truly unfortunate," she murmured. But Tyler made his own decisions. As Ashley departed, Zara felt the burden of her actions. Justice, as her father had remarked, wasn't always gratifying. At times, it simply felt overwhelming. Yet, there remained one more individual to address, and Brandon Mills was already beginning to buckle under the strain. With Jake expelled and Tyler facing legal ramifications, Brandon Mills had reached his breaking point. On Tuesday evening, he initiated the calls that would alter everything. "We need to convene," he told Jake over the phone. "All 3 of us. I figured out who's been orchestrating this against us." "Orchestrating what against us?" Jake's voice dripped with bitterness from his house arrest. "Come on, Jake," Brandon urged. "Do you truly believe it's a coincidence that we were all apprehended right after we mistreated that black cheerleader?" A silence followed on the other end. "Then you believe she's responsible?" "I know she is." "Consider it. First, you're arrested for drugs immediately after we shoved you into the mud. Then Tyler gets caught selling e-cigarettes. Someone has been observing us, gathering evidence." "That's impossible. She's just a high school girl." "Is she? Have you noticed how she never retaliates? How she accepts everything we do with that composed expression, as if she's devising a plan?" Another prolonged pause. "Meet me at Tyler's place in an hour. I'll figure out how to get there without my parents knowing." An hour later, the 3 young men were gathered in Tyler's garage, their customary bravado replaced by a palpable mix of apprehension and fury. "This is absurd," Tyler declared after Brandon presented his theory. "You're suggesting some cheerleader masterminded our downfall?" "I'm suggesting someone did, and she's the sole individual with a motive," Brandon retorted. Think about it. Who else would seek to ruin us? Jake leaned forward, his expression grim. Even if you're correct, what are we expected to do? I'm under house arrest. Tyler's facing charges and you're on the verge of expulsion. That precisely, Brandon stated, his voice gaining an edge of assertiveness as desperation fueled his boldness, is why we must confront this. If she's been manipulating us, then it's time to demonstrate what happens when you cross the wrong individuals. What exactly are you proposing? Tyler inquired. I'm suggesting we end this. We locate her, corner her somewhere private, and demand answers. And then what? Jake's voice was dangerously low. Brandon's eyes gleamed with malice. Then we ensure she comprehends that certain conflicts are not worth engaging in. Tyler nodded slowly. I like it. She wants to play dirty. Let's show her how truly unscrupulous we can be. This is our opportunity to reclaim control. Brandon continued, drawing energy from their escalating anger. She believes she's clever, that she can shatter our lives and escape consequence. It's time to teach her that actions carry repercussions. Jake produced his phone. First, we need to ascertain her address. We can't corner her at school with all the surveillance cameras and potential witnesses. How do we discover that? Brandon asked. Simple. The school directory lists everyone's addresses for emergency contact purposes. Tyler retrieved his laptop. My mother still has access to the parent portal from when she served as PTA treasurer. 20 minutes later, they had the crucial information. 12047 Maple Street, a tranquil residential area approximately 15 minutes from the school. Perfect, Jake stated, examining the address on Google Street View. It appears to be a typical suburban residence, likely no security cameras. Nicely isolated. Jake stood, his fists clenched. This concludes tonight. She believes she can dismantle our lives and simply walk away. It's time to reveal to her what genuine consequences truly entail. What if she summons the authorities? Brandon inquired, suddenly apprehensive. She won't have the opportunity, Jake responded coldly. We execute this swiftly and cleanly. Obtain our answers, make our point, and depart. What if her parents awaken? Tyler wondered. Then we adapt, Jake replied. But one way or another, this ceases tonight. The three boys spent the subsequent hour meticulously planning their confrontation, driven by desperation and the primal logic of cornered animals. Remember, Jake cautioned as they prepared to depart, we're not there to harm her. We're there to obtain the truth and ensure she understands the cost of crossing us. Right, Tyler agreed. Just a conversation. A profoundly serious discussion. Brandon nodded, attempting to reassure himself that they were not about to commit an act they would all come to regret. Zara had established a routine of evening strolls through her neighborhood, partly for physical activity and partly to clear her mind after the accumulated stress of recent weeks. Her father had encouraged this practice, emphasizing the importance of maintaining normal routines for psychological well-being during operations. On Wednesday evening, precisely at 8:30 p.m., she commenced her customary route through the serene, suburban thoroughfares. The sun had set an hour prior, and most households were settling in for the night. Streetlights cast elongated shadows between the residences, and the only audible sounds were faint television programs and the infrequent passage of vehicles on the main road. She was 3 blocks from her home, walking past Riverside Park, when she detected the distinct sound of a car engine decelerating behind her. Zara's specialized training immediately took effect. Without turning, she utilized her peripheral vision and the reflection in a parked vehicle's window to assess the potential threat. A dark pickup truck was moving slowly along the curb, matching her pace. Her father's words resonated in her thoughts. When you are being pursued, never allow them to dictate the location of the confrontation. Either elude them or compel the encounter on your terms. The park offered an abundance of hiding places and no potential witnesses. It was preferable to remain on the street where porch lights and the possibility of assistance were readily accessible. She slightly increased her walking speed, heading towards the subsequent intersection where she could turn back towards her residence. The truck door slammed shut behind her. "Hey, Zara!" She recognized Jake's voice instantly. Her pulse quickened, but she continued walking, retrieving her phone to contact her father. "Don't even consider it." Tyler's voice emanated from her right side. He had circled around through the park and was now obstructing her path to the intersection. Brandon materialized from behind a parked vehicle on her left, completing the encirclement. They meticulously planned this ambush. "We need to talk," Jake stated, approaching from behind. "And this time, your father isn't here to shield you." Zara ceased walking and turned to face them, maintaining all three within her field of vision. The nearest residence was 50 yards away, and its porch light was extinguished. No witnesses were present. "What do you require?" she asked, her voice remarkably steady despite the surge of adrenaline coursing through her system. "We demand answers," Jake responded, closing the distance. "We are aware you are behind everything that has transpired with us." "I have no idea what you are referring to." "Cease your deception." Tyler's face was flushed with anger. "First, Jake is apprehended for drugs immediately after we taught you a lesson. Then, I am caught selling e-cigarettes. Do you believe we are unintelligent?" "I believe you have entangled yourselves in trouble and require someone to assign blame." Brandon's voice trembled with a mixture of fear and indignation. "You have devastated their lives. Jake has forfeited his scholarships. Tyler is facing criminal charges. What did we ever do to warrant such treatment?" "Actions have consequences," Zara responded calmly. "Perhaps you should have contemplated that before you laid hands upon me." Those words struck with the force of a physical blow. Jake's expression darkened with dawning recognition. "So, you confess, you have been orchestrating this entire situation?" "I confess that bullies eventually face justice, one way or another." Tyler advanced another step, his fists tightly clenched. "Justice? You believe ruining our futures constitutes justice for some trivial prank?" "Trivial prank?" Zara's composed demeanor faltered slightly. "You humiliated me in front of half the student body. You ripped my uniform. You made me feel powerless and terrified." "Good," Jake snarled. "Perhaps now you comprehend our feelings." "The distinction," Zara countered, "is that you chose to be tormentors. I chose to defend myself." "Well, congratulations," Tyler stated. "You have prevailed. We are all in dire straits. Satisfied now?" "Not yet." The admission hung in the air like a challenge. Jake's eyes narrowed ominously. "What further retribution do you demand from us?" "I desire for you to comprehend that there are individuals in this world whom you cannot intimidate. Individuals who will not be subjected to victimization simply because you deem it appropriate." Brandon stepped forward, his countenance contorted with desperation. "We understand, all right? You are formidable. You are intelligent. You have defeated us. Can we simply consider this a mutual agreement?" "A mutual agreement?" Zara's voice escalated slightly. "You believe this constitutes an equitable resolution? The three of you against a single young woman, cornering me in the darkness like cowards." "We are not cowards," Tyler erupted, lunging towards her. Zara was prepared. She sidestepped Tyler's charge and drove her elbow into his ribs as he passed. He stumbled, gasping, and she immediately pivoted to confront Jake, who was advancing towards her from behind. Her father's rigorous training took complete command. Strike swiftly, strike powerfully, create separation. Jake reached for her, but Zara ducked beneath his arms and forcefully drove her fist into his solar plexus. As he doubled over, she propelled her knee towards his face, but he managed to twist away at the last possible second. Brandon attempted to restrain her from the side, but Zara spun and seized his wrist, utilizing his forward momentum to execute a hip toss. He landed heavily on the asphalt, crying out in pain. Tyler had recovered and approached her again, this time with increased caution. He possessed greater size and strength, but Zara was faster and more skillfully trained. She feinted left, then struck right, her palm connecting with his nose with a sharp crack. Blood spurted as he staggered backward. Jake, still winded, but seething with fury, withdrew something from his pocket. A knife. "Enough games," he gasped. "You wish to engage in warfare? Let us engage in warfare." The blade glinted under the streetlight as he advanced. Zara's mind became remarkably clear. Every lesson her father had imparted regarding weapon defense flooded her consciousness. "Jake, don't!" Brandon called out from his position on the ground. "This is madness!" But Jake was beyond rational thought. Propelled by desperation and rage, he lunged with the knife, aiming for her midsection. Zara seized his wrist with both hands, using his forward momentum to redirect the blade away from her body. She twisted sharply, applying pressure to his thumb joint until he cried out and dropped the weapon. Before he could recover, she drove her knee into his abdomen and followed with an uppercut that snapped his head back. Jake collapsed, semi-conscious and bleeding. 3 adversaries incapacitated in under 30 seconds. Zara stood over them, breathing heavily but audibly as the stark reality of the events that had just transpired began to settle in. These young men had cornered her in the darkness, armed with a knife, and she had subdued all 3 of them. In the distance, she heard the approaching wail of sirens. Someone had summoned the police. It was time to face the repercussions. All of them. The first police cruiser arrived within 3 minutes, its flashing lights slicing through the darkness of the suburban street. Officer Martinez emerged, her hand resting on her sidearm as she surveyed the scene. 3 teenage boys on the ground in varying states of injury. 1 young woman standing calmly nearby, and a knife glinting on the asphalt. "Nobody move," she commanded. "Hands where I can see them." Zara raised her hands slowly. "Officer, my name is Zara Washington. These 3 boys cornered me, and one of them brandished a knife. I was defending myself." Tyler was sitting up, blood streaming from his fractured nose. "She attacked us. We were merely attempting to converse with her." "With a knife?" Officer Martinez inquired, gesturing towards the weapon near Jake's unconscious form. "That doesn't belong to us," Brandon protested, struggling to his feet with a grimace. "She must have planted it." A second cruiser arrived, followed swiftly by an ambulance. Officer Martinez's partner, Deputy Collins, commenced securing the scene while paramedics attended to Jake, who was groggily regaining consciousness. "I need to contact my father," Zara stated calmly. "You won't be contacting anyone until we resolve this," Officer Martinez replied. "What transpired here?" "They followed me from my residence and cornered me. They issued threats against my family earlier this week, and tonight they intended to follow through on those threats." "That's a fabrication." Tyler spat blood onto the sidewalk. "She has been fabricating incidents against us for weeks. She orchestrated Jake's arrest, got me apprehended for selling his cigarettes, and now she's attempting to frame us for assault." Deputy Collins looked up from where he was photographing the knife. "This matches the description of a blade that was stolen from Morrison's garage last week. The family reported it missing." Jake's eyes widened as he sat up against the bumper of the ambulance. "I didn't steal anything. Someone has been meticulously planning this?" At that moment, Commander Washington's truck roared around the corner. He had been monitoring police scanners and recognized his daughter's name in the dispatch. He parked rapidly and approached the scene, his military bearing evident in every stride. "Sir, this is a crime scene," Officer Martinez cautioned. "That is my daughter," he responded, withdrawing his identification. "Commander David Washington, retired Navy SEAL. What is her status?" "She appears uninjured. She claims she was attacked by these 3 boys." Commander Washington surveyed the scene with professional acuity. 3 larger adversaries incapacitated, his daughter standing composed, a weapon that clearly did not belong to her. Pride and concern warred on his face. "Zara, are you injured?" "No, Dad. I'm fine." "Did you adhere to protocol?" "Yes, sir. I attempted to avoid confrontation, requested assistance when it was not feasible, and employed minimal necessary force when cornered." Officer Martinez frowned. "Protocol? What kind of protocol?" "Self-defense training," Commander Washington explained. "I've been instructing my daughter in basic protective techniques since these boys commenced harassing her at school." "Harassing her? How?" Before Zara could respond, Tyler erupted. "This is preposterous. She has been systematically dismantling our lives. Jake lost his university scholarships because of her." "Because he brought illicit substances to school," Zara replied evenly. "Substances you planted." "Prove it." Deputy Collins stepped forward. We will require everyone to come to the station to provide statements. This is a complex situation involving multiple allegations. My daughter will not be answering questions without legal counsel present, Commander Washington stated firmly. Dad, it's all right. I have nothing to conceal. Jake struggled to his feet, supported by a paramedic. Do you hear that? She has nothing to conceal because she meticulously planned everything. Planned what precisely? Officer Martinez inquired. Seeking retribution against us for putting her in her place at school. The words hung in the air like an admission of guilt. Commander Washington's expression hardened. So, you acknowledge targeting my daughter at school? Brandon, realizing Jake's misstep, attempted to backtrack. It wasn't like that. It was just typical high school interactions. Typical. Zara's voice carried a discernible edge of anger for the first time. Shoving me into a mud puddle and tearing my uniform in front of everyone was typical. You did not belong on our team, Tyler shouted. You never belonged at our school. Officer Martinez exchanged glances with her partner. The racial undertones of the boy's statements were becoming impossible to disregard. I believe we need to have some very serious discussions downtown, she stated, regarding harassment, assault with a deadly weapon, and civil rights violations. Civil rights? Brandon's voice cracked with alarm. Targeting someone based on their race is a federal offense, son, and from what I'm hearing, that's precisely what occurred here. The three boys exchanged looks of growing horror as the legal implications began to dawn on them. What had commenced as harassment over a cheer squad position was now potentially a federal hate crime investigation. Commander Washington placed a protective hand on his daughter's shoulder. Officer Martinez, my daughter has been documenting harassment for weeks. We possess evidence of escalating threats and racial targeting. Tonight represented the inevitable culmination. We will require access to that evidence. You shall have it within the hour. As the boys were escorted into separate police vehicles, Zara finally allowed herself to exhale. The immediate confrontation had concluded, but the true battle for justice was only just commencing. The weeks that followed the arrests transformed Zara's existence in ways she could never have fathomed. What began as a personal struggle for dignity evolved into a national discourse concerning bullying, racial harassment, and the pursuit of justice within American educational institutions. The initial significant development occurred when the Federal Bureau of Investigation initiated a federal hate crime inquiry. Agent Sarah Kim arrived at the Washington residence 3 days subsequent to the altercation. Her badge and serious demeanor unequivocally conveyed the gravity of the situation. The knife incident was merely the culmination, Agent Kim explained to Zara and her father in their living room. We have been building a case around systematic harassment predicated on race. This extends beyond simple assault. It constitutes a federal civil rights violation. Commander Washington nodded grimly. What information do you require from us? Everything. Every text message, every social media post, every witness testimony. We intend to construct an irrefutable case that sends a definitive message. Concurrently, the families of the three boys were frantically attempting to manage the unfolding crisis. Jake Morrison's father retained Harrison Wells, the preeminent and most expensive criminal defense attorney in the state, for a fee of $50,000. Tyler Knox's family mortgaged their residence to secure legal representation. Brandon Mills's mother worked extended shifts to afford a public defender. The media's attention commenced with a local news segment, but escalated dramatically when video footage of the confrontation surfaced. Someone's Ring doorbell camera had captured the entirety of the incident, depicting three sizable young men cornering a solitary young woman, Jake brandishing a knife, and Zara systematically incapacitating all three assailants. Teenage girl fends off racist attackers, blared the national headlines. Cable news programs repeatedly aired the footage. Social media platforms exploded with an outpouring of support for Zara and widespread indignation at the boys' actions. 2 weeks after the arrests, CNN's Anderson Cooper interviewed Zara and her father in their living room. Zara, when those three boys cornered you that night, what was occupying your thoughts? Cooper inquired. That this was precisely what my father had been preparing me for, Zara replied calmly. Not the physical confrontation itself, but the critical juncture where I had to choose between succumbing to victimhood or asserting my right to self-defense. Commander Washington, you instructed your daughter in combat. Do you harbor any regrets regarding that decision? David Washington's expression was resolute. My sole regret is that it became a necessity. However, I would much rather have a daughter who can defend herself than one who endures in silence. The broadcast captivated 20 million viewers, igniting nationwide discussions on personal defense, parental duties, and institutional prejudice within educational settings. In Westfield, the populace was significantly fractured. A considerable number of citizens rallied behind Zara, commending her bravery. Conversely, others felt the young men were being unjustly penalized for typical adolescent conduct. The school administration found itself subjected to a federal probe. Principal Martinez was placed on indefinite administrative leave, while an examination of the bullying incident's handling was conducted. Coach Reynolds faced immediate dismissal upon investigators uncovering his prior knowledge of the boys' misconduct and his failure to report it. 3 months into the judicial proceedings, earnest plea negotiations commenced. The evidence presented was irrefutable. Text messages detailing plans for the attack, social media posts laden with racial slurs, witness accounts of months of torment, and the surveillance footage capturing the physical assault. Harrison Wells, legal counsel for Jake Morrison, convened with District Attorney Rebecca Chen at her office on a damp Tuesday morning. My client is prepared to admit to simple assault, Wells proposed. No hate crime accusations. He serves 18 months, and this matter will conclude discreetly. Chen responded with a cold chuckle. Your client attacked a 16-year-old girl with a blade due to her ethnicity. We have visual confirmation. The plea will encompass assault with a deadly weapon, conspiracy, and federal hate crime offenses, a minimum of 4 years. This will define his entire future. He ought to have contemplated this before choosing to terrorize a child. Wells shifted his strategy. What if he issues a public apology, demonstrates contrition? Has he shown contrition? Chen inquired. Wells remained silent for a prolonged interval. He was grappling with the predicament. Agent Kim intercepted his jail communications yesterday. He referred to Miss Washington with the N-word 6 times and vowed to complete his objective upon release. Does that sound like remorse to you? The defense attorney's countenance fell. His client's prospects had just vanished. Similar discussions transpired with the legal representatives for Tyler and Brandon. Tyler's correspondence was rife with violent fantasies of retribution. Only Brandon exhibited genuine regret, composing letters of apology and actively participating in sensitivity training. Community pressure mounted as the trial date approached. Westfield High's football season was abruptly cancelled. The school board convened emergency sessions concerning new policies against harassment. Property values in the district began a downward trend as families contemplated relocating due to the negative publicity. The Morrison family bore the brunt of the economic repercussions. Morrison Construction experienced the cancellation of 3 significant contracts as clients withdrew their business. Jake's mother, a real estate agent, found prospective clients reluctant to engage the services of the parent of a racially motivated aggressor. Tyler Knox's father was laid off from his construction role when his employer deemed his association with the case detrimental to their image. His mother increased her working hours at the diner, but the family faced financial ruin. Brandon Mills's divorced mother encountered the most profound difficulties. Employed in a hospital setting, she endured constant scrutiny and judgment from her colleagues. Several of Brandon's relatives severed ties, embarrassed by any association with the case. The young men themselves were housed in separate correctional facilities to prevent collusion. Jake, detained in the county adult jail due to the weapons charge, quickly acquired a reputation for his prejudiced demeanor and frequent disciplinary infractions. Tyler, in the juvenile facility, spent most of his time in protective custody following altercations with fellow inmates who recognized him from media reports. Brandon, also in juvenile detention, engaged in therapy programs and penned numerous apology letters, which his attorney hoped might influence the sentencing. 6 months subsequent to the assault, the intense media spotlight had generated a documentary deal, book proposals, and invitations for Zara to speak at events. She declined them all, dedicating her focus to her academic pursuits and her newfound position as student body president, a role she secured in a decisive election. The plea agreements were finalized in February. Jake would plead guilty to all charges in exchange for a recommended sentence of 4 years. Tyler would accept a 3-year term for his instrumental role as the primary enforcer. Brandon, owing to his cooperation and demonstrated remorse, would plead to 18 months in juvenile detention. The concluding court session convened on a frigid March morning. The courthouse was encircled by demonstrators, some advocating for Zara and demanding accountability, while others contended the youths were being unduly punished. Media vehicles lined the street for blocks. Inside, Judge Patricia Reynolds meticulously reviewed the case file one last time before the crowded courtroom. Having presided over the bench for 30 years, handling a spectrum of cases from financial malfeasance to homicides, the Westfield High hate crime case had garnered more attention than any other in her career. We are here for the sentencing of defendants Morrison, Knox, and Mills, who have entered guilty pleas to charges of assault, conspiracy, and federal hate crime violations, she announced. Zara sat beside District Attorney Chen, adorned in a simple blue dress her mother had selected for the occasion. Behind her, Commander Washington observed with military composure, flanked by supporters from the school and the wider community. Madison Clark and several other cheerleaders had traveled to offer their backing. Across the aisle, the 3 young men were seated with their attorneys, their families occupying the rows behind them. Jake's parents appeared aged by the strain and public disgrace. Tyler's family seemed financially and emotionally depleted. Brandon's mother wept silently, having already relinquished her son to the legal system. District Attorney Chen rose to deliver her closing arguments. Your Honor, this case transcends adolescent bullying that spiraled out of control. The defendants orchestrated a systematic campaign of racial harassment, culminating in a premeditated assault with a deadly weapon. The evidence substantiates months of planning, coordination, and escalating violence fueled by animosity. She opened a substantial folder. Text messages exchanged between the defendants refer to Miss Washington as that N-word cheerleader and detail various methods for her removal. Social media posts depict them inciting others to torment her. Witness testimony confirms they made her existence miserable for months preceding the final attack. Harrison Wells, Jake's attorney, attempted damage control. Your Honor, my clients were confused, angry teenagers who made regrettable decisions. They have already forfeited their college prospects, their futures, their reputations. They have learned their lesson through consequence. Have they? Chen countered, retrieving transcripts. Yesterday, we intercepted jailhouse communications wherein Mr. Morrison refers to the victim using racial epithets and vows to finish what we started upon his release. Mr. Knox has made comparable statements regarding retribution. The courtroom buzzed with disdain. Jake's father visibly slumped in his chair, comprehending that his son had just sealed his own doom. Judge Reynolds studied the documents with mounting disapproval. Mr. Morrison, stand. Jake rose unsteadily, his orange jumpsuit a stark contrast to the expensive varsity jacket he once wore with pride. In 30 years on this bench, I have witnessed numerous young individuals err and learn from their mistakes. However, what you and your co-defendants perpetrated extends far beyond adolescent error. You targeted a fellow student based on her ethnicity, escalated that harassment over months, and ultimately attacked her with a deadly weapon while issuing threats against her family. Wells attempted to interject. Your Honor, if I may address... You may not. Judge Reynolds' voice cut like steel. Mr. Morrison, you were the ringleader of this conspiracy. You orchestrated the attack, brought the weapon, and led the assault. Your recent communications demonstrate no remorse, only continued racial animosity and threats of violence. Jake's legs seemed to falter slightly. Please, Your Honor, I made a mistake, multiple mistakes over months. With calculated malicious intent and evident racial prejudice, she consulted her sentencing guidelines. I sentence you to 4 years in state prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation with mandatory racial sensitivity counseling. You are permanently barred from all Westfield School District properties and prohibited from contacting the victim or her family. Jake's mother erupted into sobs behind him. His father sat with a stony expression, staring at the complete devastation of his son's future and his family's standing. Mr. Knox, stand. Tyler rose, his hands visibly trembling. His family had been unable to afford an attorney of Jake's caliber, and his public defender appeared overwhelmed by the federal scrutiny. You were an active participant in this conspiracy. Your communications reveal you advocated for violence, used racial epithets repeatedly, and physically engaged in the assault. 3 years state prison, 2 years probation, with the same counseling requirements and contact restrictions. Tyler's knees buckled slightly. His girlfriend, Ashley, who had supported him through the initial stages, had ended their relationship months prior when the jailhouse recordings became public. Mr. Mills. Brandon could barely remain upright, his face pallid and streaked with tears. Unlike his co-defendants, he had spent months in profound remorse, penning letters, participating in counseling, and cooperating fully with investigators. You were the follower in this group, but you willingly participated in racial harassment and assault. However, your cooperation with the investigation, your engagement in counseling programs, and your demonstrated remorse distinguish your case. 18 months in juvenile detention, followed by 2 years probation and 500 hours of community service with racial justice organizations. Brandon's mother wept with relief. 18 months was a devastating sentence, but it was not the years-long imprisonment she had feared. Judge Reynolds turned to address the packed courtroom. Let this case serve as a stark warning to every parent, every school administrator, and every young person observing. Hate crimes will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law within my jurisdiction. The defendants' futures were not annihilated by their victims' response to their attacks, but by their own choices to engage in racially motivated violence. She looked directly at Zara. Miss Washington, would you care to make a victim impact statement? Zara stood slowly, feeling the collective gaze of everyone in the courtroom. The girl who had been shoved into a mud puddle 8 months prior was no more. In her place stood a young woman who had confronted hatred and emerged stronger. I did not wish for any of this to occur, she began, her voice clear and resonating throughout the silent courtroom. I aspired to join the cheerleading squad, achieve good grades, and experience a typical high school existence. These defendants deprived me of that choice when they determined I did not belong in their world. She turned to face the 3 young men directly. You believed you could intimidate me into disappearing. You presumed your threats and violence would compel me to leave and transfer schools. Instead, you taught me that confronting bullies is the sole method to prevent them from harming others. Her voice gained strength. I hope prison imparts to you what empathy and basic decency could not. I hope you learn that every individual warrants respect irrespective of their race, and I hope that upon your release, you dedicate the remainder of your lives to atoning for the animosity you have disseminated. Jake's eyes blazed with unrepentant fury. Tyler stared at the floor in shame. Brandon appeared genuinely devastated by remorse and the ramifications of his decisions. This court is adjourned. As the gavel fell, the courtroom devolved into organized pandemonium. Reporters surged toward the exits to transmit their reports. The defendants were escorted away in handcuffs, their families following in various states of sorrow, anger, and despair. Outside the courthouse, Zara and her father stood on the steps as cameras flashed around them and reporters shouted questions. Miss Washington, how do you feel about the sentences? Called a CNN correspondent. I feel that justice was served, Zara replied confidently. These young men learned that actions have consequences regardless of your family's standing, your financial resources, or your perceived entitlements. What message do you have for other students facing harassment? Document everything. Report it to trusted adults and remember that you have the right to defend yourselves and demand justice. Commander Washington placed his arm around his daughter's shoulders as they prepared to depart. I am proud of her for standing up for herself and for every student who will never have to endure what she faced because of her courage. As they walked toward their vehicle through the throng of supporters and media, Zara felt a burden lift from her shoulders that she had carried for nearly a year. The struggle had finally concluded and justice had triumphed. The true victory was not merely the prison sentences or the vindication in court, it was the knowledge that she had confronted hatred and violence with courage, intelligence, and resolve, emerging victorious. 1 year later, Zara Washington stood at the podium in Westfield High's newly renovated auditorium, addressing an assembly on anti-bullying and racial justice. The irony was not lost on her, speaking in the very school where 3 young men had once sought to destroy her because of her skin color. "A year ago, I believed my greatest challenge would be mastering cheerleading routines," she began, her voice carrying effortlessly through the packed auditorium. "I never imagined I would have to fight for my right to exist within this school without facing harassment." The audience was silent, captivated by her every word. In the front row sat Principal Williams, Martinez's successor, alongside the new coaching staff and school board members. The previous administration, which had facilitated the harassment, was gone, replaced by leaders committed to fostering a secure environment. "But I learned something significant through all of this," Zara continued. "Bullies possess only the power you grant them. When you assert yourself and demand justice, they lose that influence." Following the assembly, Madison Clark found Zara in the hallway. Now the team captain, Madison had been instrumental in transforming the cheerleading program into one that emphasized inclusivity and school spirit rather than social stratification. "That was incredible," Madison said, beaming. "Did you see how quiet everyone became when you mentioned the knife?" "They needed to hear it," Zara replied. "Some individuals still believe what happened to me was merely adolescent behavior. Not anymore, they don't. Not after seeing Jake Morrison on the news last week." The media coverage had been devastating for Jake's public image. He had been involved in a racially charged incident at the state prison, assaulting a black inmate and incurring additional charges. His original 4-year sentence had been extended to 7 years. The former star quarterback was now a convicted felon with a white supremacist reputation. "Have you heard anything about Tyler?" Madison inquired. "He's been writing letters," Zara responded, "apologizing, seeking forgiveness. My dad believes he might genuinely be undergoing a transformation." Tyler Knox had adopted a different trajectory in prison. After being assaulted by other inmates who recognized him from the news, he requested protective custody and began participating in educational programs. His letters to Zara, which she read but did not answer, demonstrated sincere regret and a developing comprehension of the impact of his actions. And Brandon, he gets released next month. His mother says he wants to transfer schools and start anew somewhere else. Brandon Mills had served his full 18-month sentence and completed his community service working with racial justice advocacy groups. Unlike his former companions, he had utilized his time in detention to educate himself about racism and its consequences. His transformation appeared authentic, though Zara remained cautious about fully trusting it. That evening, Zara discovered her father in the basement gymnasium, engaged in his nightly workout. The space had evolved since her training began. New equipment, photographs of her various accomplishments, and newspaper clippings chronicling their triumph adorned the walls. "How did the assembly go?" he asked, pausing his exercise. "Good kids are listening." Some of them shared their own experiences with harassment afterward. Commander Washington smiled with pride. "You've become quite the orator. Harvard will consider themselves fortunate to have you." Zara had been accepted to Harvard with a full academic scholarship. Her essay detailing her experience overcoming racial harassment and advocating for justice had impressed the admissions committee. She had also received scholarship offers from 12 other universities, all eager to recruit the young woman who had become a symbol of courage and resilience. "I keep reflecting on what you said that first night," she mused, "about creating your own justice when the system falters. Do you regret it? Any of it?" Zara considered the question thoughtfully. The past year had been arduous. Death threats from white supremacist organizations, constant media attention, the stress of testimony and legal proceedings. However, it had also brought unforeseen rewards, friendships with students who admired her bravery, respect from adults who had witnessed her navigate adversity with grace, and the knowledge that she had contributed to tangible change. "No," she stated finally. "I regret that it became necessary, but I do not regret fighting back." Her phone buzzed with a text from her guidance counselor. "News crew here wants an interview about new anti-harassment policies. Interested?" "Another interview request," she informed her father. "You don't have to continue doing them. You know, you've already made a difference here. I know, but perhaps one more student will see it and realize they don't have to accept being treated poorly. The transformations at Westfield High had been comprehensive. The new administration had implemented zero-tolerance policies for harassment, mandatory diversity training for all staff, and anonymous reporting systems for students. The football program had been rebuilt from the ground up with coaches who prioritized character over victories. The cheerleading squad now actively recruited from all demographics and focused on supporting the entire student body. Most significantly, the school district had hired Dr. Angela Foster, a nationally recognized expert on racial equity in education, as Director of Student Safety and Inclusion. Her inaugural initiative involved establishing peer mediation programs and restorative justice circles for addressing conflicts before they escalated. 2 weeks later, Zara received an unexpected visitor. Brandon Mills stood nervously on her front porch, accompanied by his mother and a social worker. He appeared different, thinner, more mature, with eyes that conveyed genuine remorse rather than the desperate fear she remembered from the trial. "Zara, I don't expect you to forgive me," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "I just wanted you to know that I understand now how wrong we were, how much we hurt you." She studied him carefully, detecting none of the arrogance or animosity that had driven him to participate in her torment. Prison and counseling had altered him, but she remained guarded. "What do you want from me, Brandon?" "Nothing. I just wanted to take responsibility for what I did and tell you I'm sorry. Truly sorry." His mother stepped forward. "I'm sorry too, Zara. I failed to instill in my son the values he needed. I am ashamed of what he did to you." The social worker nodded encouragingly. "Brandon has completed extensive counseling and community service. He wishes to dedicate his life to preventing what happened to you from befalling other students." "I'm transferring to Lincoln High," Brandon continued, "starting fresh. But I wanted to ensure you knew that I understand now. What we did was abhorrent, and you had every right to retaliate." Zara looked at this contrite young man who had once helped to destroy her uniform and humiliate her in front of her peers. There was no sense of triumph for her, just a weary acceptance that sometimes what passed for justice was rather haphazard, imperfect, and undeniably true. "I sincerely trust you've truly grasped the lessons from this, Brandon," she conveyed, her voice steady. "My fervent wish is that you dedicate your remaining years to ensuring no other child endures the trials I experienced." "I will," he affirmed, a promise spoken with conviction. "I give you my word." As they departed, Zara experienced a peculiar feeling of resolution. It wasn't outright pardon, for that would require an extensive period if it arrived at all, but rather an understanding that individuals possessed the capacity for transformation even after perpetrating grievous deeds. Standing in her entryway, observing Brandon Mills recede from her existence perpetually, Zara contemplated the trajectory that had culminated in this moment. Merely 12 months prior, she had been a young adolescent striving to assimilate into an unwelcoming setting. Now, she stood as a young woman who had demonstrated that achieving justice was indeed feasible, even when it appeared utterly unattainable. She had vigorously contested for her rightful place in the world and emerged victorious. More significantly, she had rendered that space incrementally more secure for all who would follow her path. The conflict had reached its conclusion, the triumph was absolute, and Zara Washington was prepared for whatever future trials awaited. I trust you found this narrative engaging. Kindly bestow a like upon this presentation and subscribe to ensure you do not overlook future installments. In the interim, I have personally selected 2 other narratives for your consideration, which I believe will captivate your interest. I wish you a most excellent day.